Hello, yo, Joe, and welcome to episode 27 of Aren't My Optics? A podcast where grown adults discuss, overanalyze, and generally take a toy and media franchise originally intended for kids a little too seriously. Usually that of the Transformers. But not today. Instead, we're going to talk about Hasbro's other smash hit 80s toy line, supported by a nefarious advertising campaign of merch, comic books, cartoons, and a movie, designed solely to hook young minds on an endless war between the constantly expanding roster of plastic toys that you must and will beg your parents for. That's right, it's G.I Joe.
Oh, I thought it was My Little Pony. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also one, isn't it? I look forward to the Are My Optics on My Little Pony, the movie.
It's going to need a ton of research, that. But anyway, I am your bussing it into Southend-on-Sea to go to Keddies and spend my pocket money on yet another Joe to add to my collection. Host, Orion Ghia, codenamed Sleeves. And with me is my What Serpentor Was in the Movie co-host, codenamed Virtual Dave. Hello, Dave. How you doing?
I'm good. Cobra la 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 la. Yeah, I'm good.
I'm glad you got the battle cry down there. So now, to balance out Dave's almost complete lack of knowledge on the subject and my very non-cartoon based perspective on G.I Joe, we have friend of the pod, toy collector, terrible 80s cartoon watcher, and my occasional drinking buddy, James Soapstar Donovan. Welcome to Are My Optics, Soapstar.
Hello, there are still too many broken hearts in this world.
I'm glad you like the nickname.
I mean, if this was 1988 again, I would not, but it's
No.
Many years have passed.
Well, I did once accidentally call you Jason in the pub once.
People call me Jason even when they don't know my surname is Donovan, which I find really strange.
I suppose J names, but I mean, in my defence, I hadn't known you that long, so
yeah,
I won't do it again.
Yeah, you will. Everyone does. Everyone listening to this podcast is going to think I'm Jason Donovan. It's fine.
Yep, there's worse people to be. Well, anyway, thanks for joining us. So we've selected as our in to the world of G.I. Joe, possibly inadvisedly, 1987's G.I. Joe the movie. So you're the guest, James. What has been your experience of this movie and G.I. Joe in general?
Yeah, so obviously as a kid I didn't experience G.I. Joe because that's not what we had. We had Action Force, and I think I'm old enough to sort of remember like Action Force before it was just G.I. Joe rebranded. Mm-hmm. So it would be the red boxes with the yellow writing, and I had quite a few red shadows growing up. And I remember having I think it was an SAS Wolverine. And even at the time, it looked a bit odd to me because it was like this big black tank with this black clothed driver with a mask on. I'm thinking, is this really the good guy? He doesn't look like a good guy. And of course, what I didn't realise is it was actually a G.I. Joe toy repackaged to be some sort of British SAS tank. But I only had a few of those, and then obviously moved on into the late 80s and all that kind of stuff. And I think my only other exposure to Action Force as a kid was going to my local Ritz video and seeing all the videos for rent. And one of them was, of course, Action Force the movie. And I didn't even realise they had like cartoons. Of course,
Yep.
G.I. Joe cartoons or Action Force cartoons never came to the UK on TV screens. Mm-hmm. The only way you could watch them is if you rented out one of these videos. So that
Which
is
I think were the. Sorry, I was going to say, I think those were the Video Gems videos, set much like the Transformers ones.
Yeah. So my introduction to the actual storyline of G.I. Joe was watching this movie, mm-hmm. And the Action Force version of this movie, which I don't think we're discussing. I don't know if you've watched it. But regardless of what your feelings of the G.I. Joe movie are, the Action Force movie is worse because it's got terrible dubbing.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially the same. They just don't say Yo Joe, they say Full Force!
Yeah, but they also, like when they refer to someone as a Joe, they refer to someone as a Force.
Oh. Really?
Yeah, it's really, and there's some scenes like, that word makes no sense. And I'm sure we're going to get into it later because there's plenty of scenes where they change the word in such weird ways.
Mm.
Like obviously they change Sergeant Slaughter to Sergeant Slammer. Except they don't change any of the actual picture. They don't change it. So they're calling him Sergeant Slammer, but in the opening credits, he's still Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh right, they didn't change the typeface and all that. The titles.
Yeah. But yeah, you can imagine trying to watch this movie for the first time and not knowing anything, and it just throws you into it. You don't know anything about Cobra Commander or Serpentor or any of their relationships. So my understanding of that side of the franchise has been from that point and like trying to understand what the fuck was going on retrospectively through my adult life.
Yeah, well, because it was 1987, and G.I. Joe had been going since, I think it's 84 it starts, or 83?
82.
82, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, in America, it was already well established.
Yeah.
So, to be thrown in with just that movie, so much had been already established, and so much was already kind of...
and they had... So I read up on this. They did adapt a bunch of the G.I. Joe cartoons into Action Force in 1987, so the same year the movie came out, and then they did the movie as a video in 1988. But you're a kid, you don't want to pick out just a couple of random Action Force episodes. You want to get the movie. never mind that there was 5 years of backstory to it.
Indeed. Well, I'll pass over to you, Dave. Dave, let's hear your experience of G.I. Joe up until this point.
Well, up until recently, the only thing I knew about G.I. Joe was the live-action movies. That was it, really.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it wasn't. There was no, as far as I understand, there was no resurgence of G.I. Joe like Transformers has had, and some of the other Hasbro brands that I would have watched it growing up. There was no. There
were some attempts.
There was no big boom of G.I. Joe's coming back, in the same way. So I never really knew about it or really caught on. It was something I knew about that existed, and only up until recently, with all the stuff with Classified, I'm starting to just know these characters' names by osmosis. So when I watched the film, I was like, "Oh, that's Orion's got that one, yeah." But no, it was a lot. It's I had no idea what was going on, but I enjoyed it. Yeah.
As a little bit like Transformers, as a layman, there's just one or two characters that people know. Mostly it's Snake Eyes. And everything else is kind of, I don't know who that is or what that is.
You're going to be really disappointed if you went into G.I. Joe, the movie, wanting lots and lots of Snake Eyes, because he is not in the movie much.
Yes.
He's locked up for most of the movie.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's just a good thing that... they didn't try and do the Transformers thing where they killed off the toy line because the Snake Eyes would be dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they were kind of trying to do that in a way. They were trying to bring the new class in with the what they called the Roughnecks or whatever. But they did basically put a lot of the old characters in a cage for a while everybody concentrated on everything else. But they didn't kill them off.
Yeah, they fought wisely.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I mean, my experience was that I really didn't know it was a thing at the time when the movie came out. Much like Transformers, my experience with Action Force, as we've discussed, it was called for the longest time over here, was, I did have one or two of the Palatoy Action Force figures kicking about, the 5 points of articulation ones rather than the ones with all the elbows and the knees. And I read some of the comics, and of course the comics appeared in Transformers eventually when it the comic ran for about, I think it was 50 issues, and then it became a backstory in Transformers because it wasn't selling so well. So I remember reading them, and obviously reading the toy packaging and reading the file cards on the back. So I knew some of the characters from that, but I never watched the movie as a kid. I didn't watch the movie till I was in my 20s. And I thought it was ridiculous. Because I was in my 20s.
Stop, not the time to watch it, really.
But, I think I saw the cartoon for the first time when I went on holiday to Florida. One of my first, international holidays. We went to Disneyland, and I remember kind of watching, cartoons on American TV. And I think one of the episodes of G.I. Joe I did watch was part of the movie, but they cut it up into 5 parts for syndication.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember the bit which we'll get to where Falcon goes and to train with with Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing that bit on telly, so I think that's what I saw. But I was not prepared for a lot of this before, especially all the Cobra La bullshit. I was not expecting any of that at all.
I don't think anyone was expecting all the Cobra La stuff.
No. I mean, from looking at what toys came out when, went on to Yo Joe, and I think I collected G.I. Joe between 87 and 91, so it was already kind of had its day. Because I think at the time Transformers was sort of drying up, and Action Masters were a quite similar proposal to G.I. Joe. So I kind of was buying Action Masters and I started buying G.I. Joe. And what I loved about it was that they were pretty cheap, and they had all these lovely little accessories and so on. You could easily buy one with your pocket money once every couple of weeks, and just keep getting your new toy fix.
I think also, like, because we were talking about Palatoys and like buying those original Palatoys ones. I think one of the good things about those original Palatoys toys is, at the time, the biggest toy line was Star Wars. It was the Return of the Jedi figures. Yeah. And if you had a collection of those and you bought some of those Palatoy Action Force, they're just fitting really, really well. So they could have just been like some extra Star Wars characters that they just weren't in the movie.
Yeah.
But when you get into those like late 80s stuff with the O-ring stuff, they don't really fit in with Star Wars or any of that kind of stuff anymore. They're their own thing. So you have to be into that rather than it be like more of like a general 3 and 75-inch collection.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the things when they first started G.I. Joe, there was no Cobra. And when they started making the comic book, I think, or the cartoon and the comic book, they were like, well, who are they going to fight? And Hasbro were like, well, they're going to fight the Star Wars figures and the... like, they didn't have a baddie. Because, like, the original G.I. Joe, the 12-inch G.I. Joe had no baddies. It was just... It was basically a doll for boys. Yeah. You got the doll equivalent. And you bought new outfits for him.
Yeah.
And maybe you got a vehicle or two. But yeah, they were very much like, we've got to come up with baddies. Okay, you tell us what they're called. And I think it was Larry Hammer or someone like that came up with Cobra.
And Cobra's like a very nebulous concept. It's just like they're a terrorist organisation. What's their goal exactly? Take over the world?
I think it is just world domination, isn't it? But it's very vague.
It's to blow up the Statue of Liberty, as far as I understood it from the film.
Well, that's part of it, yeah.
I mean, in a lot of ways, Cobra La makes more sense than Cobra. At least Cobra La, like, they state what their agenda is. Okay, that's the reason why they're doing it. Cobra, I don't think they ever really explain it. Just random evil stuff.
Yeah, they just do bad things because they're baddies.
Yeah, like obviously in the comics and stuff, they give them more motivation and all that kind of stuff. But and in the later cartoons, like in Resolute, they have more of an agenda and it makes more sense. But in the 80s, it's just nonsense.
they're just Saturday morning bad guys. That's just what they are, and that's what most baddies were in most things, weren't they? Really. Yeah. So I mean, comparable with Transformers, comparable with Thundercats, comparable with all of that stuff. Really.
I mean, the Decepticons had an agenda. Their motivation was pretty clear. Cobra, not so much.
When did this happen? When did, like, the one bit I didn't get from the movies, like, with Transformers, there was season 1, season 2, the movie, season 3 and 4. Where does this fit in their timeline of the show, or?
So the original cartoon that was made by Sunbow, the movie is at the end of the entire cartoon.
Oh.
Because after the cartoon, after the movie, they handed production away from Sunbow to Deke, And if you want to watch something truly hilariously bad, go and watch the Deep G.I. Joe. You won't regret it. It's so hilarious. I like all the characters they introduced in the movie. None of them are in the new stuff. They're like, it's not like in Transformers where all the characters from the movie end up in season 3. Like they're all gone, all of them. They're not in the Deke show at all. It's a completely different set of characters. And Stalker with a canoe for some reason.
Yep.
And
Okay.
That was a great toy. You got a whole canoe with it.
well, yeah, I guess.
But yeah, like you say, yeah. I mean, it's more akin to Transformers Rebirth than it is to Transformers the movie in a way, because it ended up being like a 5-part final season of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's pretty apt. It's like halfway between I love Rebirth. You know I love Rebirth, but it's not a good quality production.
No.
And I feel like G.I. Joe the movie is like half. It's not G.I. Joe the movie did not have the budget Transformers the movie had. Like, that's a good production Transformers the movie. Whereas G.I. Joe the movie is like it's a little bit better than the cartoon, but some of it's not quite. So it's like halfway between the two, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, after that, it ended, and then it didn't come back till 1989 with the Deke cartoon, which was, as you say, atrocious.
But in the best way possible. I recommend watching it. It's so bad. The origin of Python Patrol is just wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And everything to do with Destro's love life is amazing.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
That was going to be one of my questions. Where was the Python Patrol people? That comes after this?
That comes after.
later.
Yeah. They use the power of pythons to make them invisible by giving them bright colours.
What?
That's it. That's the explanation. Yeah. There's nothing more else to say.
The movie really does mark the point where G.I. Joe jumps the shark and gets very silly and sci-fi and kind of ridiculous. So all of that stuff, if you see something with kind of bright colours or a kind of sci-fi kind of design, that's movie stroke post movie.
I think that's post movie, because a lot of the stuff in the movie that was toy related, I think, is still a bit grounded. And,
still a bit, but they're starting to move.
Yeah, and I think most of the real sci-fi stuff in G.I. Joe the movie, that doesn't make it to the toy line. That's I know they made toys of Globulus and Nemesis Enforcer. Yeah. But the rest of it, all the rest of the Cobra stuff, which I think we'll probably get into later.
Yeah.
They're not making all those monsters into G.I. Joe toys.
No. I mean, I was going to say unfortunately, but maybe not.
They wouldn't be as good.
No. But yeah, so should we just talk a little bit about the production of the movie then? Because as I read this, apparently there was a gap in the market due to Disney pretty much giving up after like massive losses on things like Black Cauldron.
Oh yeah.
So there was a big gap in the market for animated movies for kids, and the toy companies all jumped in there. And Care Bears the movie was the first one to kind of exploit it and was hugely successful, which led to Hasbro kind of going, right, let's do all of ours as movies. And they were doing Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony.
And Gem and the Holograms was
And Gem and the Holograms, yeah. However, this G.I. Joe the movie was not theatrically released, mostly due to the fact that Transformers and My Little Pony didn't do very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, one thing that this movie brings, well, it brought it in before the movie, but they wanted a new exciting leader, so they came up with Serpentor. It did appear in the show beforehand. He got created in the show beforehand.
Has Dave been briefed on how Serpentor is created?
You go ahead, explain.
So Serpentor, if you do not know already, it's a genetic combination of all these ancient war leaders. Like they took their DNA from all these different places. The DNA was from people like Vlad the Impaler and Genghis Khan and all these crazy rulers. And they couldn't get the DNA from one person, so they took the DNA of Sergeant Slaughter and combined it all together, and that's what Serpentor is.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that last bit. They knew Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah, I can't remember. I did watch Arise, Depends for Arise. I can't remember all the details, but they had to take the DNA from Sergeant Slaughter because he's the toughest G.I. Joe.
Well, I looked it up, and they assembled the DNA from the world's greatest leaders and tyrants. The military brilliance of Napoleon, the ferocity of Genghis Khan, the leadership of Alexander, and the evil of Ivan the Terrible. And then a bit of Sergeant Slaughter as well, because they couldn't get Sun Shi.
Right.
Yeah, for some reason. I think they were stopped. I think the Joes stopped them from getting that particular bit of DNA, so they just took Slaughter's DNA instead. Oh, why not?
Wouldn't it be better to take Duke's? Oh, is he the leader?
Sergeant Slaughter is tougher than Duke, man.
Oh,
yeah. He's the ultimate warrior.
Oh, right.
He's an actual real life wrestler, for God's
Oh,
sake.
of course, yes.
Played by himself in the show.
I mean, so it was so the bit where I forget his name, Beachhead, right?
Yes.
He's training recruits, and then
Because he's the drill sergeant.
because he's a drill sergeant. But then I thought, like, when Falcon, is that his name?
Falcon is the new character that's Duke's half brother.
Yeah, him. When he gets sent off to the slaughterhouse. I thought like this was going to be like really bad, and it didn't even occur to me that Sergeant Slaughter would be there when he arrived in this.
Well, it's kind of framed that way, isn't it? It's made to look like he's going somewhere really awful.
Well, yeah,
and I guess he is, but like, it sounds like he's going to get murdered.
It did. I was like, oh, well, okay, that's better. That's a better option.
Yeah, rather than get court-martialed, he'll be sent to the slaughterhouse. So let's go back to the origin of Serpentor. So you got the origin of Serpentor that we just went over. Apparently, story editor Buzz Dixon, who wrote a lot of the cartoon and wrote this movie, even though he's not credited, which we'll get into, he was asked to come up with the origin of Serpentor, and he came up with two origins, and asked Hasbro which one they wanted to use, and they said, "We'll use both." So,
yeah, I noticed that in the movie as well. Yes.
So in the movie, we find out that yes, his origin was created by Dr. Mindbender using the DNA of all of these tyrants. But the idea was implanted in his head by Cobra La.
Somehow.
Via a little bug or something that crawled into his head or something.
And he's told by Destro that he's not smart enough to come up with the idea of himself. Even though Dr. Mindbender is like a genius scientist who can make a man out of just strands of DNA.
Yeah. I like the fact that Destro just goes, well, obviously, you're not clever enough to come up with that.
Well, I was like, at the start, where Cobra Commander is talking to Serpentor, and he's like, "My comrades will tell you how good I am, don't worry."
Great scene.
Destro, stand up and tell him how good I am. He just rips into him.
And he's buttering all of them up, all individually, and they're all just like, this guy's an idiot.
What I loved about it, because I rewatched it this morning, it's like, when they cut away, and when they come back, they're still going. Like, there's another person talking. Is like, yeah, he's terrible. Like, oh, I love it.
No, he is quite incompetent, so it's not surprising that they've lost faith in him.
I mean, I believe it. I believe it.
So the writing credit on this movie is Ron Friedman, who also has the writing credit on Transformers, the movie. But Buzz Dixon, as I mentioned, really did write the script. But Ron Friedman has a brilliant agent and got solo writing credit on both Transformers and this, G.I. Joe, the movie. Wow. Much like with Transformers, Flint Dill completely rewrote pretty much all of Ron's stuff, because apparently it was unworkable. But he still gets the credit and the money and and all the royalties. And
it was the same thing with G.I. Joe. They got the script from Ron Freeman. They didn't like it. Mm-hmm. Buzz came along, and the only thing they kept was Nemesis Enforcer.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have been the thing I would have kept.
Yeah, and the same is true of Transformers, because the only thing they kept was the death of Optimus Prime.
Wow.
Which was the thing that everyone was upset about.
And they took that idea from G.I. Joe anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They took that idea from G.I. Joe and robbed G.I. Joe of that moment, which would have made more sense in G.I. Joe. But, I mean, I think, James, you told me to... Well, I think you mentioned there's an audio commentary on YouTube where with Buzz Dixon.
Yeah, it's a YouTuber, I think his code name's Michael Mercy. Mm-hmm. He did, I generally don't watch his YouTube videos that much, but it's a really good commentary with Buzz Dixon, and they really get into it. It's really worth listening to. But, you know, Buzz talks about, like a lot of his personal thoughts as well. He didn't like the design of Jinx. He didn't think she looked Asian enough. Apparently he's married to a Korean woman, so he didn't like that. But like lots of stuff he goes into is like, I mean, I could listen to Buzz talk about G.I. Joe the movie all day, because I've listened to a lot of interviews with him, and he has loads of interesting things to say about the movie and its production. But yeah, if you can find that video, it's worth checking out, because it's probably better than watching the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll stick a link in the description of the podcast, because yeah, it is a good one. He does talk about how he came up with the idea of killing off Duke, because he's like, well, these are people having a war. It's ridiculous not to have casualties, you know. And he compares it to Transformers, because obviously they stole the idea for Optimus Prime, and they're like, well, you know, these are sci-fi robots, and they don't have to die. But humans fighting each other, you'd expect at least someone to get hurt, you know, because there's lots of laser fire and people don't get injured a lot of the time.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. It's like with Optimus Prime. It's just that the death was kind of brutal. Like a snake through the chest. Like surely, like one of the many exploding tanks or vehicles a shrapnel could have gotten his leg, and he could have been, you know, he couldn't walk or something. That's a far better injury than snake through the chest as a way of dying.
Yeah.
You know? Just a bit brutal.
I mean, spoilers, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. Optimus Prime is also dead.
My optics!
Dave, how about you walk us through the movie, since you watched it for the first time ever recently?
Okay.
What's the plot?
That's a hard question.
what's the plot of the first 5 minutes?
Oh,
yeah. Let's talk about the first 5 minutes, because it's fantastic.
That is brilliant. Like, I think I actually have seen that before on its own, but at the time I knew even less about G.I. Joe, so I was just like, oh, this is pretty cool animation. But now I've got some context, and I get like a bit more of who's who, because it would be very hard to tell who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. Because I thought, like, from the toy line, there's a lot more troopers, like a lot more just guys in a uniform. They were all over the place in that opening scene. Like, if you didn't know who was who in your first watch, it would be tough to decide who's the good guys, who's the bad guys here. Like, but after all of that, the amazing opening in fighting some of the Statue of Liberty, you get an introduction to Cobra Commander's base.
Well, let's just talk about the intro for a second, because I think you're glossing over possibly one of the best bits of the movie. That whole sequence is fantastic.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's where the budget went.
I've got to say, going back to when I first watched it, I watched the Action Force version of it, and they cut so much.
They
from
did,
that, and they replaced that quite like. It's one of the only bits of original music in the entire movie. They replaced that with like the awful Action Force theme instead. Big thing that people take away from the movie is that opening sequence. They ruined it for the UK market.
Why was that a thing? Like I've never understood this whole UK version, American version of G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe is a very American concept.
Right.
And the whole line is G.I. Joe, a real American hero, which they just didn't think would sell in the UK. They're probably right.
And Action Force is already established as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Palatoy were licensing the toys from Hasbro, so they were releasing G.I. Joe toys painted up in Action Force colours with their own Action Force figures.
So like Takara with Transformers.
Sort of, yeah. The Action Force line, because Action Force, Action Man was our version of G.I. Joe, because the original G.I. Joe, 12-inch guy. So then they moved on to Action Force. So we had Action Force already, so it made sense that when Hasbro eventually bought up Palatoy or whatever, that they continued with that branding, at least for a while.
Wow.
Until it was unpopular, and then they changed it back to G.I. Joe.
Yeah. It became G.I. Joe The Action Force, and then eventually they dropped The Action Force. But that was for years after this, like 88, 89 or something, they dropped The Action Force bit.
Okay. Wow.
So,
I need to see this other version then, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
I don't know if you do.
I watched it, and it's not nearly as good. It's heavily edited and hasn't got the great song, which is brilliant for setting up the whole story. You know exactly what's going on.
It's cheesy in just the right way.
Yeah, it's catchy and it really does kind of just tell you exactly what's going on with kind of like explaining who Cobra are and how they're evil, and then explaining who G.I. Joe are. I mean, it's very on the nose because there's a whole kind of monologue telling us what G.I. Joe are and what they're about.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
And obviously the whole kind of, you go straight into the proper theme tune about halfway through, don't you? Like the real American hero stuff. No, it's great. And it's really well animated as well.
Yeah, and so all the characters get like little scenes for themselves, and especially some of the characters who are done like not in the movie, like Shipwreck gets a little scene for himself. Snake Eyes gets to do lots of stuff. Oh yeah. And he's not in the rest of the movie. And you get to see all the like different variations of Cobra Trooper fighting. It's really good.
It's incredibly good product placement.
Yeah.
Like I noted down what products we saw, and just in that opening section we see the Cobra Troopers, the Trouble Bubbles, the Claws, the Fire Bats, the Crimson Guard, Major Blood, Duke, Flint, the BATs, Rock and Roll and Scarlet and some others, Skyhawks, Barbecue, Spirit, Lifeline, Recondo, Destro, Cobra Commander, Baroness, Vipers, Snake Eyes, Airtight, Alpine, Moray, Torch, Scarlet again, Bazooka, Quick Kit, Shipwreck and others, the Conquest X-30s, Hawk, Lady Jane, Roadblock again, Beachhead, Iceberg, the Crimson Twins, and every other Joe you've seen so far on top of the Statue of Liberty waving the American flag. That's just in the first 3 minutes. That's like 25 products you can go out and buy. Mm-hmm. One thing that I noticed about this particularly is that because G.I. Joe, every character is a toy. It's fantastic for that kind of like just hooking kids on I need to go out and get these.
Well, it's also that, but like when I was a kid, like I understood that. Like it's not like something we didn't understand as kids. People say, "Oh, it's exploiting kids" or everything. No, we understood that. We probably already had the toys, and then we watched the movie. We're like, "Yeah, that's my toy."
So they even.
But there's one. Go on.
I was going to say, did they make toys of all the girl characters as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Scarlet and Lady J and Baroness and
Jinx,
CoverGirl.
Mm-hmm.
Jinx as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they were all the female characters. In fact, the weird one in this movie is actually they never made a figure of Pythona.
Oh, right.
And they never made a figure of Big Lob.
No.
Who?
Which was weird considering he was one of the new guys.
Yeah, Big Lob makes no sense to me. Like for starters, he makes no sense. Why did G.I. Joe have a basketball player?
Which one?
They've got a wrestler, and they have
a wrestler makes sense. It's a particular theme of wrestler who happens to be a G.I. Joe themed wrestler, basically. Big Lob is a basketball player, and up until I was researching for this podcast, I just thought like he was one of the real people they made into a G.I. Joe, because they turned a American football player,
the fridge,
into a G.I. Joe, didn't they? And I thought it was the same thing, but it was a basketball player. But no, he has no toy. He's just a basketball player in the rawhides for some reason.
Is this the guy who talks to himself in the third person?
Yes.
Or-
He talks to himself in kind of a sports commentary.
Is this not Arsenio Hall?
No?
Is the guy, because he reminded me so much of the way he looked like Winston from the Ghostbusters.
Oh, what, played by Arsenio Hall?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we'd probably know if Arsenio Hall was in this movie.
Nope. Big Lob was not played by Arsenio Hall. He was in fact played by the lesser-known actor Brad Sanders. As for Big Lob's reason for being recruited as a Joe, at the time there was no real reason, but when they finally got round to making a figure of him, a whopping 23 years later, his file card mentioned something about G.I. Joe selecting him for the Rawhide programme due to his excellent grenade-throwing skills. Tenuous to say the least. I have actually noted down the cast, which we can kind of go through. So, Don Johnson, aka Nash Bridges, or Miami Vice guy, plays Falcon.
Worst character ever.
I agree. Absolutely. We'll get on to that for sure. Burgess Meredith, who you'll know as the Penguin from the Batman TV show, and he was in Rocky.
And he was in a movie in the 1940s called The Birth of G.I. Joe.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
He was a captain in World War II. I mean, he would have done like actor stuff, like propaganda and stuff like that. But
Well, he's done loads and loads of it. He's quite an established actor.
Yes, yeah.
But he plays Globulus.
Yes, very well as well. He's really good. He's really good in this film.
Yeah, he is good. Sergeant Slaughter as himself. Or Sergeant Slammer if you're watching the Action Force.
Also really good. Like every line he says is hilarious.
Yes, that teeny tiny
Itty bitty ditty bags.
He really goes for it. He's really great.
He's wonderful.
Otherwise, you've got people like Frank Welker plays a dog.
Yeah, he plays Order.
Yep. I like that Law and Order are played by two different people. And Frank Welker plays the dog.
Well, that's what he does.
Yeah, but he also plays Wild Bill and a few others, I think. And who else do we have? Corey Burton, he plays a few characters as well, who's Shockwave from Transformers.
Yeah. Peter Cullen as Nemesis Enforcer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A bit of an easy day for him because he just has to grunt all the time.
Yeah, I think he plays Xandar as well, and there's a couple I think that he's...
Maybe.
And then you've got, obviously, Cobra Commander, played by Chris Latta.
Starscream.
And he's obviously Starscream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was Cobra Commander first.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, true. So maybe it's the other way around.
I mean, not for me. It took me a while to get used to that.
And is it the guy who plays Blaster playing Doc?
I don't know. That would, but I think he could be right.
It sounds like Blaster's voice.
Yeah.
Orion Ghia is correct. Doc is played by Buster Jones, who also played Blaster in the Transformers, Black Vulcan in the Super Friends, and Winston Sedmore from Series 4 of The Real Ghostbusters, and continued to play him in Extreme Ghostbusters, replacing the aforementioned Arsenio Hall. You'd expect Ghostbusters megafan Virtual Dave to know that, wouldn't you?
I forget her name. It really annoys me I forget her name because I really like her voice. Mm-hmm. But the woman who plays Pythona is quite an established actress as well. She plays Irma from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh. And Virulina from Visionaries as well.
I did think her voice sounded familiar, like I'd heard it in other cartoons.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
But I can't remember her name, which really annoys me, because I really like her.
Well, I'll look it up later and probably pop it in there somewhere. I guess I'll just pop it in right here. Pythona is played by Jennifer Darling, who did indeed play Irma from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Virulina from Visionaries, and many, many more animated characters across anime, cartoons, video games and film, as well as several live-action roles. So yeah, we have the big intro, which sets up the whole concept, and then we head into the swamp, and we see a load of Cobra vehicles heading towards the Terrordome, I think. The Terrordome is the Cobra's base, Dave.
I was thinking of Tetradome. Is that not what it's called?
What, the Turtles thing?
Yeah.
the big ball thing.
The big ball thing.
That's the Technodrome.
Technodrome. Yeah.
But yes, that was a toy though. The Pterodome was a toy.
Oh, wow.
It was it was a play set. So then, and then we have the whole scene that you were talking about, where everyone has a vote of no confidence against Cobra Commander.
And they give you the overview shot of all the Cobra lieutenants, like the Crimson Twins and Destro and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the only time in the entire movie you get to see Storm Shadow.
Yeah, he's just lurking around in the background, isn't he? And then we don't see
him much at all. That's the last you see of him. Like, probably one of the other famous characters from the G.I. Joe franchise. In it for like 5 seconds, doesn't say anything. That's it.
Totally sidelined.
Yeah.
So then, as an intruder comes into the base, and Cobra Commander immediately tries to lead everyone away from Serpentor so that he gets murdered.
I do like that by Pythona's introduction and her infiltration of the base as well. Like, quite a lot of the animation there is really good. I like when this is getting to like specific scenes here, but I like the way the Cobra Sentry is like looking out and then she gets surprised by her. I thought that was really good. And when all the weapons she has as well, like she throws a starfish at a Crimson Guard, and spores go over and his mask falls off and he's all in pain and everything like that. Like I thought all of that stuff is like really neat.
It's very Starro from DC Comics. Yeah. But yeah, it's good. There are some set pieces throughout the movie that I found better animated than others, and that's one of them. Yeah.
It felt to me like maybe they had done some of the animation before Transformers movie flopped.
Yeah.
And then when it flopped, they were like, okay, we can't do all this animation.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do it like cheap Sunbow style, not expensive style. Yeah, it's like all the stuff with Beachhead, that looks really cheap.
Yeah, and I think that we won't bother getting a proper soundtrack done. We'll just borrow bits from other movies or from the TV show.
It was just all the soundtracks from Transformers that I just was like, this was like the weirdest episode of Transformers.
Some of it is anyway, yes. Some of it's from Transformers the movie.
Yes. I mean, if you go and watch those original cartoons, the Transformers and G.I. Joe, they share a lot of soundtrack anyway.
Written by the same guy, yeah.
Yeah. But with Pythona, I really like her design. I think she's one of the best looking characters in this movie. So the fact that she does not have a figure is crazy. I really hope. I don't think it's going to happen, but I really hope they bring her out in Classified because it is really good character design. It's very different from everything else in G.I. Joe, but I like sci-fi stuff, so.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Classified's doing a few deep cuts here and there, aren't they? Like, there's a few ones coming up that are a bit kind of what, who?
Yeah.
Okay. So it could happen, I guess. Yeah. So eventually, Pythona reaches Serpentor, and he recognizes her from a dream/memory, which is obviously foreshadowing the fact that we'll find out that he was created by Cobra La. And then this stuff is all implanted in his head somehow. and she's after the broadcast energy transmitter, obviously.
Yeah.
That famous MacGuffin that we've never heard of.
I loved her clamshell hologram projector. It was all of their technology.
All the Cobra stuff, all the Cobra gadgets are great.
Yeah.
Like Buzz clearly had a field day coming up with all this stuff.
Yeah, it's really good that whole kind of idea of them being a techno-organic kind of, well, organic technology, I guess, is more a better description. Yeah, they're very, everything they've done is based on organic stuff, and the humans are like a pest to them with their rubbish, lifeless technology.
Which I found really odd watching that bit, is because it showed how good Pythona is, like how she got that close to Serpentor on her own with no one to help her. I was like, well, why did she need them? Like, just she could easily have gotten past the Joes and got this thing.
Well, this is a theme in the movie. I noticed that women are incredibly good at infiltrating places in disguises or whatever.
Yes, this comes up again. Yes.
This is something that happens in the cartoon a lot as well.
Yeah. We get her, we get Zarana, and we also, I think Baroness also does it at one point.
Yeah. And the Master of Disguise doesn't do it at all.
No.
Dalton does nothing. He just takes some money and then gets these goons to do all the rest of the work.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. When that happened, I thought it was Zartan. I thought that the lady that Falcon was with was him. Like, I thought, yeah, he's a master of disguise. Maybe he can just make himself look like a lady to that great degree. But I was like, oh.
No, he didn't want to get his hands dirty.
It's his sister. Okay.
Or be sleazed up to by Falcon.
I mean, no one wants to be sleazed up by Falcon.
No.
Zarana deserves all of that jam.
So the BET is this MacGuffin that G.I. Joe have that apparently costs them millions of taxpayers' dollars and can just transport energy anywhere on the planet whenever.
And they tested it in the Himalayas for some reason.
Yes, that was my big question. Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, let's just take it to a really inhospitable area.
So Cobra La send Pythona off to Cobra base in America to tell them to go to the Himalayas to take something, even though Cobra La is based in the Himalayas, and they have an army.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they didn't know where it was, but it turned out it was just over the hill. So then the Cobra all go and try and get the BET and have a big fight with G.I. Joe in the snow, which I suppose is why it's set there. Nice place to do it, out of the way of not in the city or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're conscious of 9/11 and all of that. They're not Zack Snyder.
So yeah, and they decide to do. They basically want to nick it, but don't quite go according to plan. Serpentor gets fried.
Yep. So Cobra Commander immediately retreats.
Exactly. I love Cobra Commander. I love it.
Great.
He's like, oh no, I never even wanted you to create him in the first place.
I like that everyone was trying to help Serpentor, and you kept saying, no. You know, follow my commands. Leave him on his own.
we get a few of the stereotypes, like Roadblock being a kind of jive talking stereotype, and
he has to rhyme.
Buzzer is a Cockney stereotype, and
all the dreadlocks have awful Cockney accents.
yeah, they're terrible, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what? They're all like Cockneys who live in a swamp.
Yeah, and like
Why?
I mean, I don't really know the backstory of the dreadlocks, and I know they changed them in like later like versions of G.I. Joe, but I think they're all meant to be from Europe originally. And I think one of them is meant to be a professor who was studying biker gangs and then just joined a biker gang.
Right,
but
of course.
in the cartoon, they all just seem to be Cockneys who live in the swamps in America, apart from Zartan, obviously. It makes no sense.
No.
No sense at all.
So then Cobra Commander ditches Serpentor and heads for a sanctuary he knows nearby, which happens to be Cobra La, which is this kind of crazy plant-based society that no one knew was there.
Yeah, that was...
Which the G.I. Joes all run into idiotically chanting Yo Joe and shooting indiscriminately and immediately get captured.
Yes, because it turns out all the Cobra La people are really, really tough.
Yeah.
Which begs the question: why the hell would they bother with Cobra if they were like this tough and good at what they did?
Yeah, I mean they seem to have the resources to do this all on their own.
Yeah.
I mean they've got whole fleets of fighter jets and stuff later on, and massive worms and shit. Like they could do this by themselves.
Maybe it's like an in-universe like branding thing. Maybe Cobra La didn't think it would work in merchandising. Cobra sounds better, just...
Well, Cobra Commander is one of theirs, and they sent him out in the world to get the ball rolling, didn't they, I think, generally?
I have thoughts to that, but I guess we'll get to that in a bit. but yeah, like the actual Cobra La designs, like the actual look of Cobra La is really good, I think. Like, I know people don't really like Cobra La because it doesn't really make sense in G.I. Joe, but in the context of this movie, it is like... I really like all that sci-fi weirdness stuff. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, like I say, I have a problem with it because it just doesn't fit with the original kind of concept of G.I. Joe. But it's cool on its own.
It feels like it fits more with it fits more with like Transformers, like season 3 Transformers, where they would go off on old planets and there would just be stuff like this. There would be like a bee planet, or you've got the beast planet and all that other type of stuff, where there's just stuff like this already.
To me, it feels like kind of like refreshing that at the time they could get away with coming up with crazy things and people would just accept it. And like the Hasbro were like, yeah, that's fine. And like the writers had some sort of like creative control to do something like this. Yeah. Because you wouldn't be able to do that now. It would be a lot more controlled. But like, yeah, like you've got the opportunity. Why not just make a crazy underground sci-fi organic empire?
Yeah. And this is one point where Buzz Dixon, he came up with the name Cobra La as a kind of placeholder, and they just took it anyway because he was basing it on Shangri-La. He was like, no, that's not like the actual name I want to... Oh, what? We're going with that, are we? Okay, fine. It's a little bit on the nose. But yeah, so go on.
Yeah. It's then when that happens and then they go back out again, like we were talking about when they go to get the BET, and then Serpentor's got this new information about Cobra La, so the battle cry changes.
Well, it changes when Serpentor kind of starts. Well, it's only really Serpentor who says it, isn't it? A couple of times.
I love it.
This was a thing they mentioned in that commentary I'm talking about. He wrote down. I think it's meant to sound like more like a Native American in American War Trade, like la 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 la.
Yeah.
But when the voice actor did it, it's like, oh no, that doesn't sound right at all. I have to rewrite it. And then they were like, no, it's fine. It's like,
yeah, we've done it. It's just that take's fine. We'll do that.
Move on.
Exactly.
It just does not sound natural at all.
It just comes out of I was not expecting it at all, and it was just it's great.
I was rewatching it last night, and Morgan came and sat down in the room with me. My other halves came out and sat down in the room with me, and it was at the point where Serpentor, screams "Cobra la 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 la" for the first time. And she's like, what's that? And I'm like, yeah, it's not good, is it? Yeah. Yeah, it really is quite jarring.
I mean, like, Yo Joe is a bit of a ridiculous battle cry anyway, but Cobra la 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 la.
Every time I hear it.
It gets worse as well. The second time he does it, it kind of ends on like a high note or something. It's not no. I'm glad that it didn't stick. It's certainly not something. I don't think it was ever used after that.
Oh God.
Well, spoilers, but Serpentor does not last into the Dick show for very long.
Yeah.
He gets turned into an iguana.
Well, it's only fair after what happens to Cobra Commander.
Exactly, yeah.
And Cobra Commander gets better again, obviously.
Yeah.
Of course.
We haven't even gotten to what happens to Cobra Commander yet, so...
No, but we'll get onto it. I'm sure no one listening to this hasn't watched it. So yeah, so we're introduced to the Rawhides, who are basically the new guys. They're basically the Hot Rod RC Springer Cup of this movie.
Yeah.
Even
though they don't really do much.
Yeah, but they get
no
forgotten about really quickly.
Well, they do and don't. Like they kind of disappear for a bit and then they come back, and like they have things to do, but they don't seem to be very impactful.
Apart from Jinx does do some stuff.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
But like, and Tunnel Rat does a few things. He carves his way into beasts and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember Big Lob doing anything other than.
No.
Like, I quite like the scene he's in. I think that's quite cute. Like when the beachhead scene with him in, where he's doing
the training scene.
When and he's running through things. It's like, oh, that's kind of cute. I'm not buying his toy.
You never had one.
Yeah, exactly. And Chuckles is just completely sidelined, despite being like quite a popular character, I think. And
he's a bit rubbish.
Which
though.
one's Chuckles?
In the movie, he's rubbish.
Yeah, he's the guy in the Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, the guy who was just like sod shooting from the rocket launcher. I'm gonna pick up the missile.
I'll run at it with a rocket.
Yeah, he had like a solo comic in IDW that's very popular.
Yeah.
Which spoilers for that comic, Jinx dies in that one.
Okay.
Well,
But I mean, at this point though, he was a new character, and he doesn't seem to.
He doesn't even have a voice.
it doesn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, to go through it, you've got Jinx, Tonorat, Chuckles, Law and Order, which is a guy and his dog.
The only one Beachhead has any respect for is Law and Order.
Because he's an
MP, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
But why? I thought there was going to be a payoff with the dog. I thought there was going to be a bit more of that towards the end, but it didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
No,
instead, the dog's just an idiot who brings back dynamite and hands it over to you and goes, "Here you go, I got it for you." And then Big Lob, as we mentioned, who, as we say, didn't have an action figure. Apparently, he did much later on.
Yeah.
In a much later version of G.I. Joe, but he never had an action figure in A Real American Hero, which was weird. But they're the new characters, and Falcon is the hero, even though he's a massive knobhead.
He is the biggest prick in all of cartoons. Like his introduction, like. I've spent time working in security. His introduction just makes no sense to me. First of all, he should have access to such close access to Serpentor anyway. But he brings in a girl somehow. So somehow a girl gets in a secret base with some floozy, and then he's showing off. Like, and this guy's a new recruit, so he shouldn't have been able to get there. And this is like really like breaking protocol. Like he should have been fired on the spot, basically.
Well, at one point he actually says the words "I'm pulling rank," and I was like, "Well, what rank?"
Yeah, I was confused by
You
that.
haven't got any rank.
I think maybe because he's a lieutenant in the Green Berets somehow,
Right.
and Duke is, I don't know what he is outside of G.I. Joe, but
Yeah. So yeah, talking about Falcon, I mean, he's very much an 80s character that would not survive in the Me Too era.
I don't think he would have survived. I don't think he would have survived in the 80s.
He's very handsy and very inappropriate.
I can't believe it.
He's not a hero. He is a sexist, misogynist, careless. No, everything about him is awful.
I don't understand how that got through, because when it happened, I had to actually stop and rewind it, because I thought I just didn't take it in properly. Like, that wasn't what happened on screen, but it really was.
I suppose they've gone really hard on it's a redemption story, so he has to start off as an arsehole. But they made him way too much of an arsehole for it to be redeemable, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
But but you think they would have learned some lessons from, like, Hot Rod and Prime, like, and he's...
This was happening at the same time.
Well, they were both being written at the same time.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe was actually in production first.
Oh, was it? Oh.
Yeah, so they probably made all these decisions because they took the idea of killing Optimus Prime from G.I. Joe, so they probably had a lot of this written down already. And I think Falcon does need a redemption arc. That's the story. He needs a redemption arc, but we really did not need him feeling up Jinx, who's, the backstory between the two of them isn't really well established.
No.
They had some kind of fling or something, and that's it.
I did find it that trope. I don't know what they call it. When someone's telling them a plot point, and the plot point is actually happening as they cut away. When he's telling them about the security stuff, it's like, it can't happen. I mean, you need one of these wristbands. If you haven't got one of these wristbands, you can't get through this door. But if you do get through this door, I mean, then this thing would happen. But I mean, that's impossible. But if you do get through that door, then there's this other thing. Like,
yeah, he's busy neglecting his post explaining exactly how they would break in if they were going to do so.
Yes.
And it's like ridiculous, but also I really like that scene. And I also just like how it like when the Dreadnoks and the and Nemesis and Enforcer and Python are breaking in, I like how it shows how competent both groups are. Like the Dreadnoks are not treated as idiots; they are actually capable of doing what they do.
Yeah.
and it sort of gives a chance to sort of demonstrate Nemesis Enforcer and Pythona. But yeah, why does the Penta only have 3 guards?
Yes, that was one.
And why is one of them carrying a bazooka?
Well,
Because he's called Bazooka, that's why.
yeah. It's definitely what you need when you're looking after a base, is a man with a bazooka. I've only watched like one episode of the cartoon where he's in focus. I get the impression he's meant to be a little bit brain damaged.
Really?
He's not altogether there.
No, well, I mean, he charges at a guy with a bazooka at one point
Yeah.
in an enclosed space. And I'm like, what
And
is he going to
hits
do?
him with it.
Yeah, well, he can't exactly fire at him, can he? Imagine if he did. It'd be carnage. But yeah, basically he gets broken out and goes back to Cobra La, where we get the explanation as to how Serpentor was created, and Globulus implanted the idea with it's called a psychic motivator.
Oh, yes.
It was like a little bug thing that apparently implanted the idea in Dr. Mindbender's head to do what he did. Which is fine. Why not?
But then you get the thing with Cobra Commander and how he was incompetent, I guess, in leading Cobra.
But also all this time he wasn't a human,
Yeah.
No.
which is odd.
Yeah.
And that made no sense to me as a kid when I watched it. It still makes no sense to me as an adult. Like, I thought the idea, when I watched it as a kid, was that he was a human scientist and he got exposed to the spores from Cobra La, and then he got took in by Cobra La, and then went out as a human in disguise to start Cobra. That makes more sense, but no, he's a citizen of Cobra La.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
It gave me strong Jason the World Warrior vibes.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, his creation.
Yeah.
And also kind of Cobra La in general. Like that. Dave, have you watched Jason the World Warriors at all?
I have not.
What?
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's got one of the best theme tunes to any animated show from the 80s, full stop.
I mean, a lot of them have really good theme songs. Not a lot of them are good, but they all got good theme songs.
I definitely put this in my top 3, if not.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Oh, no.
Maybe
no.
top 3. Galaxy Rangers, Mask.
Mask is great, yeah.
Well, it could be in top 3, you're right.
Yeah. So in Jason the World Warriors, for a quick aside, there's a scientist guy who is working with plants, like creating kind of intelligent plants, and it goes wrong, and he creates the Monster Mind, which is like this kind of evil plant that then wants to take over the universe.
And it can turn into a car.
Of course.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So and his son has to basically track down. It's like an amulet. They need to get the 2 halves together, whatever, and find his father or whatever. But basically, the baddies are plant monsters, and
And the good guys are the cast of Star Wars.
yes, essentially, yeah. Yeah, there's a kind of Han Solo character and
And a Ben Kenobi and a Princess
Yeah.
Leia and
Wow.
exactly, yeah,
Princess Leia, who is a plant herself,
yes, she is, yeah.
and a tiny robot knight.
That's a little maybe C-3PO or R2-D2 or both put together maybe. Yeah, but that whole scene of Cobra Command's creation gave me that kind of vibe from I think it's from the opening scenes of Jason the World Warriors, where you see that happen.
But it mutates his face, and he has like 7 eyes, which we never got to see before.
Well, that's why he wears a mask.
Yeah. Before we go forward, another thing I really liked about Cobra La when they rescue Serpentor is the red carpet they lay out for him with the tons and tons of crabs.
Yeah, I love that. Nice touch.
Just like somewhat Buzz having a field day, coming up with every single sci-fi concept he can and throwing it in.
Yeah, and later you have the time worm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like a stick with a worm that kind of crawls up the stick.
makes no real sense, but yeah, go for it. That's cool.
It's like an hourglass, but it's a worm. It's fine. Yeah. So yeah. Meanwhile, back at Joe HQ, we have the the court-martial of Falcon, where his half-brother sticks up for him, reveals he's his half-brother, Duke. So rather than just have him shot, they send him to go and train at the slaughterhouse, where they go and chuck him out of a helicopter in the middle of the desert somewhere, and he meets Sergeant Slaughter, who's kind of crazy drill sergeant nutter, really.
And the three, I can't remember what they're called now, but these three other students who are like an ex-Viper and some Russian guy, and I can't remember who the third one was. A terrible gypsy stereotype.
Yes, yeah. I think one was called Big Dog.
Yeah, or Big Red.
And the other one is I think I noted it down, but yeah, he's like a Russian acrobat or something, isn't he? And the other one's a football player who was too violent.
Oh yes.
And Mercer is an ex-Viper.
Yeah.
It's the coolest one.
Yes. I can't say that it matters, but I feel the need to correct myself and James and tell you that Sergeant Slaughter's renegades are named Mercer, Taurus, and Big Dog. We were nearly there between us, right? And yeah, so he goes to do that training thing with those. That gives me quite a Predator vibe. Dutch and his homoerotic meatheads.
Yeah, big tough guys all living together on their own. No girl in sight.
It's great.
Yeah, you're one of us now, Falcon. Get lubed up.
Exactly, show us your muscles. Let's go.
Yeah, those are pretty good. Those are mine. Yeah.
No, it's brilliant.
I like when they get the update about Cobra or Cobra La, and they have to go on that secret mission.
Yes.
Go into Cobra's headquarters.
Pterodrome.
And he's like, Falcon's like, we'll make it a real challenge and not take any guns. And they were like, yeah, that's a good idea. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, it's a really important mission. Let's go in without any guns.
We'll go in without any guns, except those that are moulded onto our bodies. We definitely need to take them because they're on our toys.
Excellent.
But so, yeah, that's what they do. Yeah, they end up going, they break into the Pterodome, or Drome. Is it Pterodome or Pterodrome? I think it's Drome. I think it's Drome. To find out where Roblox group have gone, basically, because they've lost them. Meanwhile, at Cobra La, Cobra Commander gets turned into a snake.
Yep.
I love it. I love it when so obviously that whole scene is quite scary because they explain all the like their agenda and how they want to turn all humans into zombies with these spores and everything like that, and they give Cobra Commander the spores so you can see like how awful it's going to be, which is pretty intense stuff for a kids cartoon as well. It's really good.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, their plan is to like launch these spore pods into the atmosphere and then use the BET to power them up, and then they'll drop spores on the planet and turn all the humans into mindless zombies.
Yeah, it's just like really dark and scary.
Yeah, and there's some good animation of that as well, like of what it would look like when it happens.
I like that scene with Cobra Commander changing because he didn't fully change. Like every time you see him, he slowly mutates a bit more, and it's like you can tell that he's really I don't know losing his humanity or whatever because he keeps trying to remind himself that he's a person.
I was a man.
I was a man.
I was a man. It's really good body horror stuff. Like obviously it's PG horror for kids, but like it's again a writer having a really good time coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
But I love it when they're trying to work out what to do with him, and Globus is like, throw him into the eternal pit of emptiness, or whatever he says. And someone says, "Oh no, why don't we just put him with the G.I. prisoners? Show them their fate." Oh, well, that seems quite dramatic.
Yeah, I think Serpentor suggests it, doesn't it? Yeah, and then Globius is like, well, that seems a bit over the top. Like, What were you just about to do? Yeah. You're right. It doesn't seem nearly as dramatic as what he was going to do. I mean, Nemesis Enforcer, I guess we should talk about him a little bit. He's basically, he's like Archangel from X-Men.
He's before Archangel, though.
It probably is, yeah, but he has a very similar design, yeah.
Yeah, because I think, I don't know, you know my X-Men better than I, but I believe a friend of mine actually just bought the comic of his first appearance, but he appears in an X Factor comic, and I believe it's 1989. He becomes Archangel.
Yeah, I mean he's Angel beforehand, but
yeah. Whereas
so
Nemesis Enforcer must have been conceived 86, 87.
Yeah,
because he was the only thing that Ron Friedman did.
No, I mean I wouldn't say he's a rip-off, but seeing as Archangel is a much bigger character than everyone knows now, there's similarities. Yeah. He's
compared to Globulus, who we haven't talked about his design much, but his design is crazy. And Pythona. Nemesis Enforcer's design is just a bit boring. Like he's not very biological. It's just he's a guy in a suit and he's really strong.
Yeah. He's got wings and big kind of spikes on his elbows, but yeah, it's not like Globulus with like a crab over one eye, and a kiwi fruit for an eye.
Yeah,
and he has like he floats around in a huge
ball thing.
Yeah,
yeah, and later it's revealed that he has a snake body inside there. So yeah, you're right. He's in a way he's much more pedestrian. He's just got massive wings.
Yeah.
But he's just basically the heavy, isn't he? He's just like
it's a brute
this
force.
Unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they chuck him in with the rest of the Joes, which is Roadblock and his team, which includes Snake Eyes. Is there Scarlet there?
Scarlet's no, Scarlet's not there. No. I think Lady J might be there though.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe Quick Kick is in there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Quick Kick,
my second least favourite Joe.
Really?
Oh, he's so annoying.
Who's your least favourite Joe? Is it Falcon?
Falcon is my least favourite Joe.
Yeah.
And it makes me so happy that the previews of people are finding him in Classified at the moment, and it turns out it's like the worst toy in the whole line, and his face sculpt is awful. And I'm kind of really happy because I fucking hate Falcon.
Well, this is the thing, right? Making Falcon like your main character. It just seems such a weird choice. I mean, I know Hawk isn't particularly memorable looking, but Falcon looks exactly like Flint.
Yeah, he's a really boring character design.
Yeah, it's like, why? You know, at least with things like Transformers the movie, if you could go back and compare that, like Hot Rod was an interesting design, like a cool looking character. Flint's just a bloke in a beret, and sorry, not. Falcon is, and so is Flint. Both, you know what I mean?
You're mixing them up because they look exactly the same.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. There's minimal differences between the two guys.
They're kind of like Flint. He's got a good voice actor. He's kind of like just good. I'm a muscly like army guy, and I've got my girl Lady J, and I really like her. That's a perfectly decent character. He's not exciting, but I like him.
For some reason, I always thought Flint was English, but no.
I think he's English in Action Force.
Ah, that explains it then.
And Lady J's Irish.
Yeah, that's where I got it from. Because when he first spoke in the movie, I was like, why is he American? I'm confused.
No, the only English people in the cartoon are the Dreadnoughts for some reason.
Yeah, the Cockneys. Yeah. The Cockney swamp people.
Yes.
So they throw him in with the rest of the G.I. Joe guys, and then they immediately escape, and Robot gets blinded, and so Cobra Commander has to help him escape, whilst the rest of them will get captured again.
Yeah, by vines again, like really cool concept. Like even Snake Eyes can't overwhelm these vines, and they get cocooned up. They're like, I mean, I guess they're in comas, but like they're cocooned so tightly, like realistically they wouldn't be able to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of creepy as well. That's more like PG horror stuff.
Yeah, and they're dispatched very quickly, and basically Cobra Commander tells Roadblock, "Now they're goners. You can't do anything for them. You're gonna have to get out of here." And then Roadblock has to be his eye. Sorry, Cobra Commander has to be Roadblock's eyes, and he does so by pointing. I noticed. He's like, this way. Like, he just told you he's blind. He can't see that way.
Not that left, your left. No, that way.
But they escape nonetheless. So we had the infiltration of the dome, and they find out where they are, and then they all decide to go off. Then this is where my memory gets a bit foggy. Our new heroes, they steal a tomahawk for no reason.
Not yet.
Rawhides.
Yeah.
Jinx and crew, yeah, they steal a helicopter at some point.
Yeah, they hotwire it, and Chuckles gets up on top of it to start the rotors, but he doesn't get down.
No, he just stays at the top of the helicopter.
Yeah,
that's the one thing Chuckles does in this movie.
And he shoots a pistol off the top of the helicopter, which I think is incredibly dangerous. It's quite likely going to shoot through the rotors or something, or get his head chopped off by the rotors. It's very, very dangerous. But I mean, they crash almost immediately.
Yeah, and I think it ran like again. I'm with you. The whole sequence of events at this point gets very muddy.
Yeah, you missed a bit. He has to get they get the BET thing first, and then that happens because Teak gets injured, and that makes Falcon realise that I need to do something.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah, I can't remember if they steal the tomahawk first or they steal the tomahawk afterwards.
But there's basically like a big fight at G.I. Joe HQ, and Cobra La turn up, and that's the first time Serpentor shouts Cobra La 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 La. And we really go into all the Cobra La crazy shit now. You've got Cobra La spaceships that fire, jets that fire like vines and tentacles.
Noises.
Yep, they do. Yeah, make very odd wet noises. And then there's massive snake creatures called marauders, apparently.
Yeah, all the monsters start showing up.
Yeah, doesn't Duke save Falcon from something?
He gets in the way of the snake.
Yeah, he gets.
Oh, that's that bit. Yeah, so the scene where Serpentor flies in a Night Raven, and then crashes. I think everyone crashes almost immediately. Yeah. And then there's a fight between Serpentor and Falcon, and then Duke gets involved, and that's when the snake thing happens, which essentially is meant to be his death.
Yeah, because he gets a snake through the heart.
Yeah. He basically jumps in front of his half brother and saves him from being murdered by Serpentor. And then we have the whole kind of death of Optimus Prime bit, but unfortunately, Hasbro changed their mind, and he just went into a coma.
I like when that happens. Like no one says it. It happens off screen that Scarlet says that. You know, it's like.
Yeah, you don't see her face when she's saying it because she didn't say it.
Yeah, so Scarlet is crying because her boyfriend's died.
Yeah. But and so what's his name? Hawk. Hawk has tears in his eyes.
Yeah. Real emotional, like Yojo moment, and everything like that.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, he's in a coma. Oh, okay. Why are we so bothered?
Yes.
And then so the BET is activated, and the spore dispersal things start happening. Cobra Commander's turning into a lizard stroke snake, and they all head to Cobra La, don't they? To
all the teams have united at this point. So Sergeant Slaughter and his team, Rawhides, Roadblock and Cobra Commander.
Oh yeah, because Roadblock and Cobra Commander are stumbling about, fall down a hill, and just happen to be right next to a snowcat.
Yeah,
and get found, and that's when they warn Hawk.
Yeah.
That Cobra La is really fucking dangerous, but it's already too late.
Yeah.
Where was his name is Barbecue, right?
Barbecue, yeah.
Or you said is there another guy who's another fire guy for G.I. Joe? Because I feel like fire would have been the detriment of Cobra La, but no one brought
Barbecue's a firefighter.
He's a
Barbecue
firefighter.
Doesn't start fires.
Oh, okay.
There's misconception there. He has an axe. He puts out fires.
He does actually show up for the last battle though, Barbecue. He's not been in the movie up until this point, but he's in the background with his axe. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could chop down the vines in Cobra La.
Yeah. So then the main team, as it were, like the guys we're meant to be rooting for, the guys who are and Falcon on his redemption arc, who, because his brother is now in a coma, not dead, suddenly bucks his ideas up and heads off to sort this all out. They end up in Cobra La fighting 1-on-1 for some reason with people.
Because they went round the back. They went down in the water system.
They went through the sewer because tunnel rats.
Yeah, and they do manage to get all the Joes out the vine somehow, and Cobra La activate all their defenses, which is probably one of my favourite scenes. Is seeing all the bridges come to life.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff.
There's one in particular that is just so imaginative because you can clearly tell it's like some sort of stick insect, and you're expecting it to like stand up and just get up and fight, but it stands up and then does this massive twirl. And like that's something that someone had to write down for an animator to do, and it's like that's really clever.
Yeah, it is really good.
And there's just so many of these things, like so many scenes of these like things coming to life, and like all the Joes having to fight them, and they give like little sequences for all the Joes, like not just the main characters, but like characters who haven't shown up in the movie yet. It's that whole bit is really good.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I really like the Cobra La designs.
Yeah, there's like a big kind of spider thing that looks like a rock or something. Yeah, and it gets up and starts walking around. No, it's really great. And then so then we get like a kind of the big final battle where you have Falcon against Serpentor and Jinx against Pythona.
And Sergeant Slaughter versus Nemesis Enforcer, which is
exactly
one of the most memorable things I took from the movie as a kid, was that fight. Especially him like doing this is for gung ho ripcord, and it's not ripcord, gung ho I can't remember, Alpine and Bazooka. This is for Falcon. This is for me.
Yeah. No, it's great, and I like the fact that Falcon highlights the fatal flaw in Serpentor's chariot, which is that Serpentor wears a cape and he's got a massive fan just below his cape.
Oh yeah.
He goes, I just shoved that in there, perfect, brilliant, and then it gets kind of pulled into the fan. They stop the BET before it does its thing, just in the nick of time.
But do they?
And well, yeah, they do. What do you mean, but do they?
Well, they do stop it, but then it's like, but they've got enough energy already. You're too late, G.I. Joe man, Falcon.
But they overload it or something, don't they?
Yeah, he does eventually, but it's like there's a few seconds of panic of like, oh, we failed.
Yeah, that's true. And then they blow up or something, and they burn up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, well, you think they would have done anyway, really, but I mean.
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, because there's a scene with Falcon and Jinx kind of looking at the sky, watching the last bits of the stuff burn up. And then we all get told the Duke's fine. Everyone cheers. Oh, yeah. Falcon is vindicated for some reason, even though he's still a sex pest.
And somehow with Jinx at the end.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Well, why not? And then that's it.
And he gets the stars thinking about his dead brother. Who's not dead.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's the movie. Mm-hmm. That's it.
That's it.
My optics!
I think I'll go to you first, Dave. What did you think of the movie?
It was a lot. It was a wild ride. I think I forgot to check. What's the runtime to the Transformers movie?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
I think they both must be about 90 minutes long.
Yeah, well, I actually got the Wikipedia page open for the movie, and it's 93 minutes long, so yeah.
Okay, because this film felt like it wasn't as fast as the Transformers film. Like, I feel like they both have a lot in it, and there's a lot going on, a lot of characters, a lot of new characters. But in this, it just felt like because there were so many teams in certain places doing different things and then coming together, like, like I had to watch it more than once to really get it. Like, it was a lot. But I enjoyed it. I mean, for someone who doesn't know anything about G.I. Joe, and doesn't know anything really about the lore or where these characters get their code names from or something, like...
Well, it's very important you can understand where Quick Kit gets his name from.
I think it was fun. I mean, the biggest glaring thing about it is the choice of, like you're saying, about Falcon being the hero and the whole redemption story. That's the bit that's like, yeah, maybe they could have reworked that. Gone back to the drawing board with how you want to have your underdog story or redemption arc. But apart from that, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I do think... I think you're right about the pacing. It's not as slickly paced as Transformers movie.
It's not.
Yeah, Transformers movie is surprisingly well structured. Like, you have the opening scene, then you split off the cast into two bits, so you get to have a little bit of adventure in the middle, and then you have a pretty clear-cut ending. The act structure in G.I. Joe the movie... What act structure?
It felt more like I guess it kind of was, like, it felt more like a TV movie. Like, it was obviously, this was half an hour one Saturday, half an hour the next Saturday. Like, it felt like...
Yeah, so there is like a trope with because G.I. Joe, a lot of the stories are like 5-part stories, and they're basically, there is a MacGuffin, and there's different parts of the MacGuffin, and G.I. Joe and Cobra fight over the different parts of the MacGuffin for 5 episodes, and Cobra get all the bits, and G.I. Joe has to stop them. And they do this many, many times.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of doesn't have like the 5, multiple parts do you need to assemble the BET, but like it's still got that kind of messy structure to it.
Yeah, there's lots of like separate bits that they keep switching backwards and forwards between places and things happening, and they don't seem joined up all the time.
And they introduce so many characters.
Yeah.
And none of those characters stay in the next season. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Replaced by new characters that you have to learn and buy the new toys for.
Well, it's such a huge toy line that it's not comparable with Transformers, because Transformers were more expensive, bigger toys. So every single person is a toy and every vehicle is a toy. So there's just so much crammed in there, and every year there's a new line of them. There's another 20 figures. There's another 20 vehicles or whatever. And it keeps churning on. So they do have to keep throwing those things in. I hadn't watched this in ages, but now having more knowledge of what was in the toy line, like, it's literally everything that's come from 1982 all the way to 1987 is in that movie, or a lot of it anyway. Sometimes only fleetingly, but it's there.
And I think that's the right choice. I think at the end of the day, like, you don't really the goal is not really to make a good movie. The goal is to make something that kids will be able to recognise the toys that they own and feel excited about their toys. And I know that's capitalism and all that kind of thing. We complain about that stuff, but as a kid who was growing up at the time, I found it exciting. It made me happy.
Yeah.
So I think doing that kind of stuff is right. It's better than doing that and making a coherent story, because if I wanted a coherent story, I would not be watching Action Force.
Very true, very true. And it does its job very well. You see the toys you own and you see the toys you want to own. And it gives you both, that feeling, oh, I've got that one and that one. Oh, but I want that one. Oh, that's cool. Obviously, the connection to the toy line is very important. But I mean, I think it's not the best movie, but it's fun. It's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie, yeah. I mean, it's just weird from my perspective, because, like I said, all I know is the live action stuff. And when I watched,
poor man.
Yeah, well, when I watched that when it came out, I mean, God, I don't know when the first one came out, but a long time ago now. I thought it was really wacky. It was really weird. Like, I was like, oh, this is not believable at all. I mean, they're shooting acid at Eiffel Tower and it's falling apart. Like, what? And now watching this, I'm like, oh, they didn't go far enough. That's the problem.
Yeah, the G.I. Joe movie should have been way more wacky.
Yeah.
I mean, I quite enjoy the second G.I. Joe movie. I mean, it's been a while since I watched it, but I think they understood that it needed to be wackier.
It needs to be, yeah.
We don't talk about Snake Eyes' origins.
I've not watched any of them, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
So,
But
future podcast episode, guys.
No.
you've still got to get me to watch the Transformers movies.
That's
too.
true.
So
Oh no, that's even worse.
It is worse.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's it's the best G.I. Joe movie I've watched, but it's the only one I've watched. But I really did enjoy it, especially watching it back now. It's a fun time, and it's good seeing all of those characters and kind of spotting them as well. It's a shame that so much of it kind of like mucked about with, and it didn't end up being a cinema release. Because I wouldn't have mind seeing what it would have been if Transformers the movie hadn't stolen some of its plot points and hadn't ended up being the one that came out in the movies and then was a flop, and then as a result this didn't. Could have looked better, could have been animated better.
But you would have got the other version, right? Like, you wouldn't have got the G.I. Joe version.
That's a really good question. Like, if it had been theatrically released, what version would we have gotten?
I imagine it would have still had some of the overdubbing.
Yeah, because the UK release of Transformers the movie is slightly different from the US release, isn't it?
Yes.
Great movie. Great suggestion. Thanks for suggesting it, James.
Yes.
I didn't suggest that.
You did.
I suggested you should do an episode of Classified. I think it's Dave who suggested we do the movie.
Yeah.
I would have suggested doing the movie.
Well, we can talk about the toys in a bit.
Yeah, but my feelings of the movie is I don't think it's a good movie. Like, the plot is incoherent and messy, but there's a lot of it I like, and again, I think the fact that Buzz had a lot of liberty to come up with all that stuff, like the stuff I really enjoy from the movie, is the Cobra Last stuff because of all the designs and the monsters and all that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that I think is really cool, and I think that is very, very particular to like a lot of obscure 80s cartoons, like Jason and Will Warriors, which you mentioned earlier, and Inhumanoids as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you're aware of that one, Dave.
No.
Oh, that's another movie that you need to add to your list. The Inhumanoids.
Oh, there's a movie as well.
Yeah, there is. So, like, originally, like Gem and Inhumanoids, which were more Hasbro's toy lines, rather than introduce them with a full cartoon, they would do them as like a movie that they would break up into 10-minute parts, and they put that as like a compilation that they're having on Saturday mornings. And Inhumanoids is proper PG horror type stuff. It's like gaiju monsters, weird tree people, weird rock people, and a bunch of humans who have to just work all this stuff out. The less I explain about it, the better. Just go in without any knowledge of it. It is super bonkers. But I think all the Cobra Last stuff fits in very well with that kind of genre. And I don't think we get stuff like that anymore. I think it's a lot more safe, and I don't think writers have that much liberty.
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, I hated the Cobra Last stuff, well, when I first saw it, because I was like, well, this isn't G.I. Joe, this is weird. But now watching it again, the inventiveness of it is fantastic, and it's some of the best stuff in the movie.
Because Falcon is not the best stuff.
No. The thought process behind making him like the lead character, it's just like, it just doesn't work. He's just such an arsehole. Honestly, I totally forgotten about him until I watched it again, and I was like, oh, this is the prick we're meant to be rooting for. What?
Like, even when I was 8, I hated him, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He feels like a character that should be in a Michael Bay film. That's the strange thing, you know.
I would probably meant to like him in that
I think
too.
Michael Bay took up the wrong franchise. I think
he's Sam Witwicky from Transformers.
Yeah. Maybe he should have done G.I. Joe. It's a little.
he likes his army stuff.
My optics!
So yeah. Anything else you want to say about the movie?
Was there a special movie toy line? Like, these are toys branded for the movie type of thing?
Do you want to field this, James?
I believe they did three Cobra characters as toys, didn't they? They did Globulus, Nemesis and Force, and one of the troops.
Yeah.
And I think that was more or less it, because the rest of it was just in the toy line anyway.
Yeah. Pretty much. So yeah, they did a three pack with the Cobra La characters, then the rest. So no, there wasn't really a G.I. Joe the movie branded toy line.
I thought you like people just get like repackaged and like here's Sergeant Slaughter with the steak he ate in that one scene, or like is it all?
Sergeant Slaughter came with his triple T.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I can't remember what triple T stands for now. It's something to do with his wrestling career. Tag Team Terminator. That's what it stands for. But yeah, I mean, Slaughter was introduced into the toy line before the movie, so
same time as the Pentor was.
Yeah. So I mean, because like the toy line, as we mentioned before, ran from like 1982, as you said, through to late,
quite
very early
90s.
Yeah. Early 90s, and Real American Hero finished, I think, and then we had some other like similar lines after that, but diminishing returns.
Yeah, like after that you had like Sigma 6.
Yeah.
Which I think was barely noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to do other cartoons, like they did. I can't remember the name of it. I want to say G.I. Joe Retaliation. That's not the right one. But there was a web series that was written by Warren Ellis. That is much darker than most G.I. Joe stuff. Obviously, Warren Ellis is a bit of a questionable figure right now.
Mm-hmm.
But they compiled that web series into its own movie, and that is actually worth watching. It's quite well animated, pretty decent storytelling. And then they made a new show called G.I. Joe Renegades in 2010, which is very much of the same ilk as Thundercats 2011 and stuff like that. It's like an actually good cartoon series that is worth watching even now. It holds up.
I've not watched any.
Like it's not like groundbreaking or anything. Like in terms of those reboot shows, it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Like not quite as good as Thundercats 2011, not as good as the Turtles reboots. But it's not as good as Transformers Animated. But it's still worth watching. And then they made the movies, and I think that's more or less what we've got for Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Until now.
Until classified.
Which is not a show, but it's a very good toy line.
It is, yeah. Probably the favorite thing that Hasbro are doing right now for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I'm a pretty big Transformers collector, but I get more excited about classified at the moment than I do about the new Transformers stuff, because I've already got a huge Transformers collection. I don't really need that much more. But like, I really wanted to have a 6-inch figure line, and I didn't want to do Star Wars or Marvel or DC. So when Classified came out, I thought, oh, that's good. I don't really know that much about G.I. Joe, but that seems like a good line to collect. And for me, Classified is not about G.I. Joe. It's just these are great toys, and I can imagine them as much as I want, because they're not really attached to any particular G.I. Joe period. They're scattered all over the place. And they can be the toys I want them to be. Yeah. And that toy line has gotten better and better every year. Yeah. Like, I've just got CoverGirl coming, who I think is like the best female figure they've brought out. She's really good. The Tiger Force stuff that came out last year should have been like rubbish, but all of them have been really, really good. I really like the Crimson Bats, as we were talking off camera earlier. It's just a really good toy line.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, G.I. Joe fans were like screaming out for a 6-inch line, and this is it, and it's great. And I started collecting it a little bit when it first kind of came out. I picked up a few, and I liked it, and I do like it, and I've got more now. But what was missing was the vehicles, and now we're getting them. It feels more coherent. Yeah, because the trouble with collecting 6-inch figures is they're all 6-inch and they're all roughly the same build, and there's all these guys just lined up on your shelves. It gets to a point where it's just like this a mess of people. But it's nice having some vehicles for them to. It's like great having Serpentor's chariot. We've got the His tank coming. Got Trouble Bubble coming. And there's the
Tons
Ram
of
cycles.
bikes, yeah.
Yeah, the Ram cycles. It's nice that they're getting into that stuff, because I think as much as G.I. Joe is a line of action figures, it's a line of vehicles as well.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that too.
And I think also there's quite a lot of third party stuff you can use as vehicles. Like I have a remote control tank that I have put a breaker into, and that's on my display at the moment. I've got Snake Eyes sword fighting on top of it. So, and I've seen people they've bought like convertibles, like red Corvettes from like girls' toy lines. So like
Bratz one.
Yeah, there's and it's perfect for six figures. So they put the Crimson Twins in there, so they can drive a convertible about. So there's plenty of stuff like that, and people like scratch build stuff for it. It's like even if they didn't bring out vehicles, which they are, which is going to be crazy, and I don't know where I'm going to display them. But even if they hadn't done that, I think people would come up with ways to put them in vehicles.
Yeah. Because that's part of the problem of making a 6-inch line, is that the vehicles have to be that much bigger, and then having a space for it is insane.
Yeah,
because at least when it was all 3 3/4 inch, you got it's more manageable.
Yeah,
space wise. But I mean, because I did collect the original toy line quite a bit. I got into it around about 1987, I think, possibly after the movie, but I didn't really watch the movie. And that part of my enjoyment of Classified is the nostalgia to it, because like some of the stuff a lot of the figures that I bought are ones I had before when I was collecting as a I say kid, I was probably about 13, 14. But one other thing we should mention about the toy line is that the same as Transformers, the toy line was going through a refresh, which is why they were thinking of killing off Duke and stuff. Like they were going to swap a lot of people out. Duke was getting swapped out for Hawk, and they were swapping out a lot of the troops. Like Cobra Troopers had been replaced by Cobra Vipers. You had like Breaker was replaced by Dial Tone, and Snowjob, Iceberg, and things like that. So that they were trying to swap those toys in, but they didn't do it in the same kind of way that Transformers movie did. Possibly because what happened to the Transformers movie was so upsetting.
I mean, it would have. It makes more sense in a G.I. Joe setting, from what I understand it, to swap characters out. You could just say they're on a mission somewhere else, or for the troopers, they could just go, "Oh, look, we're getting you new armor, or new, these troopers are like the elite, so we're giving them a new name." Or like, I feel like the swaps could be made like pretty easy, but I don't think killing them off is the best option. Like, I don't know why.
No. No,
well, you can kill off troopers plenty.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, but I mean, it's like the namesakes. You don't have to kill them off. I think it's a good thing that they didn't go the Transformers route.
Well, I mean, it was a massive misunderstanding by Hasbro, basically not understanding how connected kids were to the characters in their toy lines. They thought, well, we can just take this guy out, put a new guy in, and they'll go buy him. And they were like, no, we like that guy.
Yeah.
Just bring him out in a different costume, which is what they do now. Just bring him out like Transformers, G.I. Joe, whatever. It's like, well, he's the powered up version, or he's the he's the bigger version.
It's the long lost brother, twice removed.
Yeah. So James and I are the only two people who collect Classified in our little pub group. So I just have to kind of we go on about Classified and they'll ignore us generally.
Yeah, and then we start talking about music, and then Mike will join in.
Yeah,
we end up talking about Transformers for about half an hour, and then everything starts dissolving from there. By the end, we just talked about Britpop for like an hour.
Yeah. Well, you're the one who's got the bravery to bring in non-Transformers toys the majority of the time.
I've pretty much since that group started, I've always brought in something non-Transformers, because when it started, I wasn't really buying that much Transformers. I was getting really deep into NECA Turtles at the time. So I was often just bringing here's a random Transformer I picked up, and also here's Genghis Frog.
I would love that, because I just started getting into the NECA stuff, and I've got the Slash.
Oh wow!
And it's so cool.
Oh, I haven't got him yet. Oh, he's amazing.
He is so.
I'm gonna have a look at his back.
Yeah, sure.
This is terrible for the podcast. That's so cool. NECA comic Slash. I was in New York last October. So I did see him on the pegs, and I was very tempted by him, but he was the only one I didn't pick up. I picked up Fugitoid and can't remember her name now. The Time Woman.
Oh,
from
yeah.
the Mirage Comics.
I can't remember her name. Yeah, I know who you mean. The person with all the clocks on her. And
and I was happy with both of those. But yeah, that NECA Archie.
The Archie comics.
Slash. Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to the Archie stuff. I've had to hold off on Slash, but man, seeing him on camera, I do now think I might go and buy him after this.
I mean, I just walked into Forbidden Planet and I saw him on the shelf for the first time, and I was like, I do need to buy this. I didn't want to buy it in Forbidden Planet, but I did want to buy it. So I tracked it down later. One of
the things that I'm not liking about the future of Classified is the fact they seem to be restricting sales to just from Pulse. They're not really doing it through online retailers or Forbidden Planet or those kind of things anymore. Yeah, which seems like a shame. Like I hope they still release Classified in the UK somehow, and it keeps going, because I know it's not the most popular thing in Britain, but I really like it.
Yeah, it's going to be Pulse exclusive in the UK pretty much, isn't it, going forward? Which is a shame, because for a start, the prices on Pulse are a bit more than most places.
Yeah.
And you'd think, I mean, obviously it's Hasbro, they want to make money, but they're not even paying a middleman in that situation. It's not like they would be selling those figures for a trade price to those shops, and instead they're selling them to us for full RRP.
Yeah,
plus postage.
No. You just order over £50.
Oh yeah,
which is two figures.
Which is only two figures anyway.
Yes, that's true.
And then they ship the one you want, and then you cancel the other one.
Yes.
And then you get free postage. So that's my hack.
I figured I ordered enough stuff from Pulse, or would order enough stuff from Pulse. I just had a Prime membership to save on postage.
I don't order enough to make a membership make sense to me. But if you were,
I mean, now I'm going to order plenty from them, because it's the only place I can buy them. I mean, with this last wave, I only bought the stuff I really wanted from Pulse. So that was CoverGirl and 3 of the Crimson Bats. Which, again, I'm really happy with all of that. The Crimson Bats are amazing. CoverGirl is amazing. And the rest of it, I was like, okay, I'm going to wait and see if I can get import stock from ID Toys instead. Or Star Action. I don't think Star Action imported them in the end. But ID Toys did. So I've ordered a 4th Crimson Bat. the original version of Outback, which I think is going to be good, but it's just not going to be as good as the Tiger Force version, which I think is amazing. And then the repaint of Barbecue, which I don't know if I'm really going to do anything with that. And then I don't know why I bought him, but I've also ordered Falcon.
Oh dear!
And I think I'm going to look at him
after all.
I'm going to look at him and then put him in a bin and never think about it ever again.
Yeah, and on top of that, the prices are quite high and going up, I imagine. Especially looking at the new stuff that they're kind of teasing. There's a lot of accessories in there, and they're trying to pack them out a bit and warrant the prices.
Yeah, I mean the prices for figures at the moment from Hasbro Pulse, they're expensive, but they're still cheaper than some of the comparable lines. Like Valaverse is obviously the main. I say main competitor. They're obviously not really a big competitor. They're a much smaller company.
But they're the alternative.
Yeah, and they brag that they're not raising the prices or anything like that. But one, to import stuff from Valiverse is really expensive. And
Yeah.
their figures were already more expensive than G.I Joe in the first place. So I'm glad they're not raising the prices, because they're already really expensive and they're
Yeah.
hard to get. So to me, G.I Joe Classified is still like, it still makes me happy. I'm like, lots of the things that people grumble about, they're not bothering me too much. Like, one of the things people are obviously really complaining about at the moment is the plastic-free packaging. I love the plastic-free packaging.
Me too. I think it's the greatest.
Yeah, I know there are mint in box collectors, but my personal opinion, and I know it's controversial, is that mindset needs to go away, because like, why do you want just a box with a figure in it? You do something with it. Don't be. That's a very 90s mindset of like keeping it in a box so you can sell it on later. It's not.
Yeah.
I think the worry is just because it's a thing from Hasbro and they're so inconsistent with their quality control. Like, I don't think G.I. Joe gets the problem as much, but some of the other lines.
Yeah, but most of us aren't buying this stuff off the peg anyway.
No.
Yeah.
I don't mean.
So
like,
it's not like we can walk into the shop and inspect the quality anyway through the window.
yeah,
And even then, some of the quality control issues you've had, like the thing with the Viper arms, you could only see that if you take apart the Viper.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Even quality control in the factory can't detect that because it's already assembled. You can't tell whether it's got brown arms or white arms.
Yeah. I mean, obviously don't know exactly how they assemble them, but still, something along the line has caused them to put out a lot of them wrong.
Yeah.
And most of the things that I find that are problems with classified figures is sometimes there's some sloppy paintwork, but it's often loose joints or kind of gummy joints or badly tolerant stuff, and it's not stuff you could check looking through a window anyway.
I mean, but that's the thing. Is like there's other Hasbro lines that have like issues with like the wrong heads attached, the wrong leg, extra accessories, not an amount of accessories. It's just, I think it's that side of it that's what people are very like. Well, we don't trust you enough, Hasbro, to get your stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, they complain about that, but then they'll complain about the open window because they'll say people will steal the heads off or touch them or something.
Yeah,
you can't win. You can't win either way.
I think that actually is a better option, though. I do. If I had to pick between the two, I think open packaging is better.
I mean, what I love about the plastic-free packaging is I can throw it away.
Yeah,
it's just so easy.
Yeah, it's less. It's like because I've literally just opened like 6 boxes, having been away for a couple of weeks. Like, I literally just had a box, and it just became a striking box, and I was just pulling stuff out and throwing it in there, and and I just go in recycling.
Well, I've learned not to do that after my Viper experience. Because I then had to send it back, and I was like, but I've already thrown the box away.
Yeah.
So I keep the boxes around for a week or so until I'm 100% sure there's no problem with the figure, and then I'll chuck it out. But yeah, it's so easy to throw away, and obviously I'd rather be recycling cardboard than plastic. So
especially when plastic is often not recyclable.
very not often at all.
Yeah.
And, like those McFarlane figures in their giant boxes with all the massive plastic windows.
Yeah.
Like they're it makes me sad.
It's them and Diamond Select. They're just like they just have to. It doesn't make sense that they are in such big packaging bubbles anymore. Like,
yeah, I recently opened up a Valiverse Scarab, and I swear there was more plastic packaging than there was plastic in the toy. There was so much plastic packaging I had to get through.
Yeah.
And Valiverse are proud of that. They they say we make stuff to be displayed in the boxes, but that's not really that's not what I want. I want to. Valiverse stuff is really good. Like, obviously, it's like the army stuff is a little bit like drab and generic, but the swarm troopers, which includes the Scarabs as well, they fit in really well with Python Patrol, and they look really good, especially with the wings and stuff. One of the best things I think about them is the fact that they've got actual treads on their boots, and it feels like it actually helps them stand up properly. I don't know if
But you do have some of the classified figures are a bit don't stand up so well on some of them.
No, all my Crimson Guard are currently fallen down.
The Crimson Guards have got like kind of banana-shaped feet.
Yeah, like
it's weird. Like, why have you done that? Like, the toes turn up, so they haven't got so much surface area. So
I do find some of the ankles on classified figures a bit weird. Like when I'm adjusting them, I'm just like, should this turn this way?
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't. The ankle rockers are odd, aren't they? They don't really work.
They don't swivel. Which I find very strange.
But overall, it's a great line, and I'm pleased to still be collecting it. And I'm looking forward to that his tank, even if every now and again I think I'm just going to sell it. I'm definitely going to open it, that's for sure, and then I'll make a decision. But I do want it. It does look great. You've ordered one as well, haven't you?
I've ordered one, and I've also ordered another 30-party line. I've ordered the Skeletron Robo Skull, which is based on Palatoy's Action Force, going right back to the start, and it's going to come with some red shadows. It
looks beautiful. If it wasn't for space issues, I would want one.
Yeah, I am going to have space issues. I do not know how I'm going to display any of this stuff. And we have a whole year's worth of G.I JOE classified. That looks like it's going to be amazing. How I'm going to display on my already full shelf a His Tank, a Robo Skull, 3 Trouble Bubbles.
You're going for 3?
I'll probably go for 3, depending on how much they cost. If they end up costing like 70 quid, I will buy 1. But I'm expecting them to cost about 50 quid each.
I'm thinking more 70, to be honest, but we'll see.
I don't think the Trouble Bubble is going to be as big as people think it is. I think that's what the people have been basing their high speculation on. I think it's going to be priced the same as the Ram bike, and I think the Trouble Bubble is probably the same size.
I think the reason I'm thinking is not because of the size of the Trouble Bubble itself, but the fact that you get 3 heads for the guy and quite a few accessories. It feels like there's more in it than there is in the Ram cycle.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
My optics!
And there you have it. As the Joes like to say, knowing is half the battle. So with our help, maybe you now know more, and more importantly, Dave now knows more about G.I. Joe the movie. Do you agree with our musings? What are your thoughts? Why not let us know on social media? Search for us on all of them. You should find us easy enough. You can find me in particular on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Ghia Orion and Orion_Ghia respectively. And Dave, where can they find you?
You can always find me at my base of operations, Instagram or Twitter at VirtualDave26. Both places.
Yeah, very occasionally on Twitter every now and again. You pop up and retweet some things. Great. James, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You've helped us make some sense out of that insane movie. It was great to have you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hopefully I can come back for some other insane movies. When you want to do the Inhumanoids episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Right, so don't forget that if you enjoyed the podcast, you can let us know by liking, subscribing, sharing, reviewing. You can even join our Patreon if you're so inclined at www.patreon.com/ArcMyOptics. Don't forget the AA. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and please join us next time on, all together now,
Optics!
Cobra la la la!
Cobra!